Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Pull Up Trey podcast, which is the podcast wherein Trey, my dear friend, he pulls up. We're going to cut right to the chase. We're talking about Brice Sensabaugh, Bilal Coulibaly on this episode. It's draft season after all, but also mixed in with that, we have to discuss a front runner for the Raptors job by the numbers, the gambling odds, and as far as like resume, maybe the strongest resume applying or not applying, being considered for the
Yeah,
Raptors coaching job,
yeah.
Becky Hammon. There's a lot of stuff flying around about her. We're going to talk about that too. But first, Trey, how the hell are you?
I'm doing good. Yesterday. I was hoping that we could defy the odds and move up, but I can't be upset.
That's so it was like a big day for Toronto sports yesterday,
Yeah,
or for our relation to Toronto sports, because we were at, we took ourselves and our pals to a Jays game, a Gossman game, which means we're not going to see any runs scored by the Jays, obviously, but we're going to see some fine pitching. They lost. And then our whole section, as we were kind of sitting there, uh, you know, we reacted to the lottery and seeing that the 1% chance that the Raptors had to move, it didn't materialize. And so there's nothing happening in the baseball game. Suddenly, five men scream out in angst and pain. And yeah, how'd you feel about that in the moment? Like I heard you
um,
yelling, but is there words to go along with that?
it kind of just like a culmination of like everything that happened. You saw the Blazers, who had a better record than the Raptors at the time of the deadline, jump up to the number 3 pick because they decided to tank, and we decided not to, and we're at 13. It's a tough pill to swallow, but it's draft season. You have hope. I've been digging into players nonstop because
Yes.
it's the only way you really can look forward to next season. So I'm excited to jump in.
Something we're probably going to end up talking about as well is the fact that Portland did make that jump,
Yeah,
because Portland is a team that has been openly clamoring their organization and their star Damian Lillard for OG Anunoby. Even a report today said that Dame looks up to OG. I don't know what that's all about,
I
but
love it.
like OG's a cool guy, I get it. But for if that's like an actual quote from Dame rather than editorializing on behalf, which it probably is, of the
100%.
reporter or whoever's sourcing anything like that. But the Raptors probably could be in play for that number 3.
Yeah.
So something we'll talk about probably next week. It'll be a little bit more heavy, but let's start with the Becky Hammon stuff. Okay, so basically, I'll give you the gist without ruffling any feathers. I think Dearica Hamby is a player in the WNBA who recently got pregnant and traded from the Las Vegas Aces. Now, pregnant women are protected. Their labor is protected. Their maternity leave is protected by the WNBA. You get your full check, your full payment when you are pregnant, maternity leave, all this kind of stuff. This is something that women in the workplace have had to deal with for a very long time, is discrimination based on their ability to get pregnant, seeing them not advance as much because they're deemed, less dependable, right?
Yeah.
A bunch of stuff about that. And also then when they are pregnant, that discrimination coming as well. It seems on its face that Dearica Hamby faced both of these things, wherein she was pressured not to get pregnant and then pressured and questioned and harassed about the fact that she did get pregnant, having her efforts to not get pregnant called into question, it being something that affected their negotiations for a contract, and eventually the alleged quote saying that we need bodies, you're pregnant, her getting traded, even though
Yeah.
she had apparently negotiated a lesser contract so that she could stay in Las Vegas. People have their roots. We
Yeah.
talk about NBA players. It's a lot easier to justify, hey, they get traded whatsoever. WNBA players do not make the money that WNBA players do not make. They make good money, but they don't make like just move everywhere all the time type of money. So
Yeah.
there's a bunch of stuff going around about that. Dearica Hamby posted about this in January, saying that, she was being harassed and treated poorly because of her pregnancy. Becky Hammon, it turns out after the result of an investigation, gets suspended for 2 games without pay, 2 of the 40, and the Aces, they lose their first round draft pick. And that is unprecedented. I think both of those things
Yeah.
for the WNBA. Now, there are critiques of the fact that there's going to be somebody who doesn't get drafted in a league that's already tough to make it in because of a coach's mistake. That's something. But also that Becky Hammon, apparently, as in the results of this investigation, was somebody who was the conduct in the workplace not like that's
Yeah,
no good. That's bad behavior. And I don't want to hit too hard on Becky and I don't want to do like all that kind of stuff, but I'm going to be honest, if there was a male coach coming from the WNBA who was being considered for the Raptors job and this came out, for most people I think they would consider like I don't want that coach
yeah,
because it's a very bad look. Now, we have an opposing point of view, right? So we're going to read you out the quotes kind of around this situation. Now, an interesting one is obviously from Becky herself. So, quote, I don't recall my relationship with Hamby being anything but on the up and up, and I'm just, obviously, along with the organization, disappointed with the findings. It's never good to have your name be associated with something like that, which is not who you are as a person. That's not how I operate. I did talk to my team. They were great. I have to say, they've been very professional throughout this whole process. Also, on the side of Hammon was the ACES organization and vice president of the WNBA Players Association, Kelsey Plum, who is arguably the most popular WNBA player as far as like platform, as far as like social media reach. Like she's a very big name in the WNBA, and she obviously is one of the better players in the league. Quote, my job is to represent the players, and that's the totality of everyone. It's amazing when verdicts come back and no one is happy. And I think that just shows a poor level of leadership and a poor process on the investigation, end quote. This is a stark contrast from what we typically see in the NBA, where NBA players, we can agree,
yeah.
engage in a great deal of headassery. Not like getting pregnant is fine, you
It's
know?
lovely.
But NBA players engage in real headassery. They do like absurdly stupid things, as anybody does in any group, right? But the NBA Players Association, they would never say something like this. So it is odd to see that, like it's a union that they're not coming out on the side of the players, or she's not coming out on the side of the players. Last quote I'll read for you. Quote, this is from Kathy Engelbert. It is critical that we uphold the values of integrity and fairness, which create a level playing field for our teams. The Aces failed to adhere to league rules and regulations and have been disciplined accordingly. We are also disheartened by the violation of our respect in the workplace policies and remain committed to ensuring that enhanced training is conducted and standards are followed across all WNBA teams. I've just unloaded quotes, context, the situation. Trey, what are your thoughts on all of it?
That's a lot to digest, but I think first probably like the lack of like publicity around the current situation. Seeing that Hamby spoke about this months ago, we've seen situations where we've seen other players, like especially in the NBA, say that this coach was upset with me because I didn't push through this injury. We even saw that with OG actually
Yep.
in the most relevant scenario for us. We've seen we've seen Matt Barnes come out against Doc Rivers for being forced to play or being egged on to play because of a certain injury, and that could influence their position on the team in the future and in the present. With a situation like a pregnancy, which is not an injury or something that someone is actively decides that they want to do, the fact that winning is being upheld over natural born life is kind of disturbing in a sense. And I think ideally like the punishment is probably too light for if considering the fact that 2 games is worth someone's entire life being rooted around someone who's pregnant, moving to a new team that also has to deal with being a mother and also being a professional athlete at the same time doesn't have like is obviously extremely difficult at the same time. I think it just goes to show that a lot of any organization, no matter what level, gender, they value winning over humanity 99.9% of the time. So I know a lot of people are probably shocked. I was shocked, especially because Becky has been championed as someone that needs another job, and I'm not saying that she should never get an NBA job, but it's really disappointing that it came from her because so many people were looked up to her and obviously want her to make break through a glass ceiling and getting into it, getting an NBA job. But overall, I would just say it's disappointing, especially from Plum's perspective, where it appears as though that she hasn't necessarily taken enough seriousness in the situation, or even condemned her coach in what happened in the situation.
It's like that's a quite a line to
Yeah,
take, right? So I get it from the if all the girls get together, all the ladies get together and say like because it's sports, you have a finite amount of time in the league,
yeah,
contracts lining up, everything like that. It's a big year for the Aces. Last year was a big year for the Aces. All this kind of stuff. And everybody says it's important that we all don't get pregnant. Like you know what I
right,
mean? Like they say like all of us want to be available in the most important games, etc. All that kind of stuff. I understand that those conversations obviously happen, but there has to be grace allowed for when like
yeah,
if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Tough. You know what I mean? So, and then applying pressure on a like, a pregnancy is a pretty big deal. It's not
yeah,
like a sprained ankle. Like LeBron James can't tie the womb tighter. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
it's a huge deal. So, yeah, there's it seems like and I'm coming out the way I'm discerning this situation is that I'm believing Dearica Hamby,
yeah.
her side of things. And so I think there's a lack of sensitivity from the opposing group and I guess a couple members of it. It's just it sucks when there's like misconduct and you want to have somebody who is without misconduct. Now, I'm sure I don't know what it ends up. I don't know what it looks like. She's going to do her suspension. Everything will eventually, time heals everything, all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. We'll see. But it's an interesting conversation that we've discussed for like, I don't know, 12, 13 minutes. You want to move on to draft stuff.
Oh, this is my favorite time of the year.
Okay. We're going to start with Brice Sensabaugh. And so these are the two prospects we said on the last Pull Up Trade podcast that we'd be discussing. It's Sensabaugh and Coulibaly. Coulibaly is the teammate of Victor Wembanyama. He's like an 18-minute per game player. He is a tools over stats
Yeah.
guy at this point in time. Some of the film really pops. Sensabaugh is like true freshman, was one of the best scorers in college this past year, is a certified bucket getter to the degree that if you do some of those selective like Bartovic, that database, and you're like,
Yeah.
who hits this amount of guarded shots? Who hits this at this percentage and takes this many and can hit threes and can hit pull ups and can. Sensabaugh is just like a dynamic and wide ranging shot maker.
Yeah.
And for Ohio State, he was awesome. I want to get your initial thoughts on him before we kind of dive into Sensabaugh, the player, what we think might translate, and fit with the Raptors. Actually,
Okay.
before that goes,
Go ahead.
let me say, I know people are gonna comment on Twitter, on the website, on YouTube, podcast, wherever, and say they want us like maybe they're not in their expected range, maybe they're not in whatever. We're like a month and some out of the draft. Like we're going to be talking about a lot of prospects. This is not us, like we just have a lot of guys to talk about. This is not us selecting
Just nerds.
Sensabaugh over Anthony Black or anything like that. It's just these are the guys we're talking about right now who we looked into.
Yeah.
That's where we're at.
Okay. All right. With Sensabaugh, I think he breaks through the glass ceiling that the typical his typical archetype in college has. Where there's guys like Cam Thomas, Marcus Howard, guys like that who are typically very small, very quick, and are very jumper reliant and need help to generate space. Sensabaugh is the space creator. Well, the good thing about him is that although his weight or his size is a bit of concern, he uses that very well to generate space. And also, once he gets a tilt and able to get downhill, he's polished enough with his footwork and also just bumps that he is able to open up space for his jumper. Although he doesn't have the burst, I would say like to be that primary scoring option where he was in Ohio State, you can see points in time where if he was utilized on the Suns, where he would be coming off of a Chicago action, and he's a skilled enough shooter to have the footwork to square up and hit shots, hit moving shots at a very high clip. So for me, if the defense checks out, which is horrendous, he has a chance to
Yeah.
be probably the steal of the draft. I would say.
So I watched like a ton of film.
Yeah,
I was very interested in him because I saw maybe like a 2 minute highlight package a month ago. And I was like, damn, I'm seeing this guy. Like he has, the triple threat package. He has like jab series, all that kind of stuff. I see in this highlight tape, he's moving guys around a screen. Like he can bait and ice and then go the other way and comfortably pull up left-handed dribble, right-handed jumper. That's the way his body's oriented.
yeah,
He is a guy who I saw him sprinting off of, sprinting into a corner for a grenade DHO and hit the jumper. That's like Bryn Forbes level shooter stuff. And he's not, as you say, with like Howard and Thomas, like these diminutive guards that are jumper reliant.
yeah,
Sensabaugh is taller, big frame,
yeah,
and he's doing this too. As far as like what his jumper looks like, some of his footwork, I actually think Buddy Hield is a pretty good comp for like his shot prep and like how he navigates screens, especially coming out of college. Although he wasn't quite the shooter, but he's a lot younger than
yeah.
Buddy. And Buddy was older than people thought, like he's a year older.
Yeah,
If everybody remembers.
and that's it.
He he's a really impressive shooter. The thing that is like I think man, if you do it, it's like Marcus Howard and like Sam Hauser and those types of shooters. Like Sam
Yeah,
Hauser was a legend at Virginia, I think, shooting the ball. And Sensabaugh is a guy who fits into that very narrow view of like volume, efficiency, and self-creation jumpers. And it's really good. The thing that he's more reliant on it than he should be if you're trying to kind of project him to the NBA level, what obviously works is the set shot, the
yeah,
shot prep. If he's open at the NBA level, he'll be able to hit that very end. He'll be able to like draw closeouts and especially flybys and stuff like that. He'll deal with very comfortably. It's the creation that where we talk about long strides helping you kind of blow past guys and get clearance. I don't think that he has these super long strides typically.
yeah.
It's
Very
he's
choppy.
very controlled, he's a choppy guy, and while that doesn't help him get to the rim, that does help him get to counters in the mid-range. And so the interesting aspect of that is that in the short mid-range, he shot 57%.
Yeah,
In the long mid-range, he shot 50%. His basically everything is going right to left. Like the
hmm,
counter is like right to left. He's ending up on that left side, hitting it, and that's where he rarely ever gets to the rim by his own creation. A lot of guys catch up on those drives, but they're catching up, and he's because he's going at his own pace and he's falling into that nice little spot on the floor where he hits that jumper. This is where you wonder there's a bunch of college guys who I think make like eat in that range. They get comfortable, they hit
yeah,
shots over guys. They're typically not freshmen. The thing that makes sense about different is that you can see flashes of strength creation
yeah.
to buoy that, and not strength creation as a senior or like a junior versus
Not
smaller
no
college
one's sick.
players, but like he's a big freshman who you could conceivably see him doing it at the NBA level, having these counters to kind of if he gets the step, he can put guys in jail down the line. He can kind of like grind to the spot, hit little pop
Hmm.
shots, and he'll also be a guy who I think he already does this at the college level, but it's that one dribble, jump stop, pivot, and hit shots out of that. He should have a ton of counters in the future. Immediately, I'm not so sure. But the one thing for certain is that he can shoot off the bounce, he can hit set shots, and he shot basically as good on his guarded jumpers as he did on his unguarded jumpers. And he took a lot of guarded jumpers. The shot making is really impressive. One of the best in the draft. Now, as you say, the defense is kind of whatever.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have something to say.
Yeah, my question for you is I think one thing I see that he might have trouble scaling up to in the NBA is he's probably going to have to score against a position up from him. I would see that a lot of teams are going to put like a Grant Williams, a Jay Crowder type body type on him, seeing as he doesn't have the burst and those players have both the length and the strength to defend him. I wonder, is he skilled and polished enough to score and generate space even if he doesn't have that necessary strength advantage?
So he's got a he has a functional handle.
Yeah.
He has like little hezzies, he has in and out stuff, and he kind of plays with, we see Jordan Poole is maybe one of the most egregious, but he's really good with it, is playing with, and Trey Young too, playing with that pickup point, hovering hands, you know, is it the jumper coming? Is it going to be like a push into space? He's, despite not being very manipulative and not getting that wide, and like, because he's short, choppy steps, he has to beat guys with burst if he's going to beat them. Like, he's not going to step around dudes. Um, there's definitely some manipulation. I don't think it's enough to like just start burning guys. It's
Yeah.
enough that like he'll not get the ball poked away and he can set up his jumper. Everything is built around the jumper, getting to that jumper. The moves he makes are rarely ever about like pushing into space. Like Jalen Green is a good example of this, right?
Mhm.
Jalen Green is like a big throw ahead dribble guy, throw ahead, gather, burst to the rim. And that scales down to lower level players when it comes to that. But Sensabaugh is a guy who's like, he's always keeping the ball in his vicinity because he always wants to be able to like pull.
Yeah.
And so that's an impressive part of his game. He's also going to, that's why the guarded shots thing matters, because he's going to have guys in his face his whole career, I
Yep.
think. He's
Yeah.
a choppy guy. A lot of it is about finding his space, his spots, and he has like an almost unprecedented shot making package for a freshman at this volume, at this efficiency. And if you believe in that, which the film will make you believe in that, by the way, it's like he has a buttery form. He's so smooth getting to his spots. Um, he will sell dreams to you the same way that Gary Trent Jr. did, except he's bigger, right?
Yep.
And so it's going to look good.
Yeah.
And it's just about getting the right amount of volume from downtown and then improving at his playmaking decisions. Do you? I guess I'll swing that to you. The playmaking is important because he's going to get run off the line, and
Yeah.
he'll get run off the line into the jumpers, but he'll also get run off the line into passing opportunities.
So I would say beginning of the season, I would have said no. He was probably closer to that Cam Whitmore level where like the very tunnel vision like. But what you saw towards the end of the season is that teams were actively knew he was their best player and they were sending more doubles his way and he was making better passes. The passing numbers I believe got better throughout the year. But for me as a player on a good team, I see him having a similar role as a Michael Porter Jr., where he doesn't have to create anything. He's going to be operating off of tilts, and he's becomes 10 times more dangerous just simply because he's an extraordinary shooter. Michael Porter Jr. got to a level, although he's much bigger,
Yeah,
to a point where he can survive on defense, and his shot making makes up for anything, any lack of rotations or anything else because he both he's a great cutter as well as he can hit tons of contested shots. I think Brice is going to be able to hit something at a very close level, and also he probably can score more off the bounce than MPJ can, which is what you can see from a tertiary perspective is super valuable in the playoffs.
yeah. We're not talking about, we haven't really kicked around the idea of a primary.
Yeah,
Like when I talked to Josh about Kobe Buffkin or Grady Dick and Cam Whitmore, like Kobe was the guy who most conceivably you could see handing a decent amount of possessions to, and even that seems like it's, you're kicking the can down the road if it
yeah,
ends up being there. Sensible, I don't get that sense, huh?
hmm
But it doesn't seem sensible to give Sensible that many creation possessions, but he shoots the hell out of the ball, and he also is going like that's there's just
yeah,
so talking about the playmaking. I saw a few passes where it's like pump in the corner, pump, put the ball down, baseline, right? Everybody collapses to the paint. The immediate read for most players is out to the other corner as a passer. Sometimes you get the drift from the guy zoning up the weak side, and that above the break pass becomes available. All that kind of stuff. I saw him make a couple good reads, even it seems like he's baiting the zone, right?
yeah,
That's super encouraging. I saw him as, because he was a handoff guy sometimes for Ohio State, as far as I could tell. If guys were cheating gonna shoot the gap, and there was a back cut available, he could make downhill reads
hmm
there's a few touch passes out on the perimeter. A lot of those, like, connective passes and, like, attacking tilts passes, those were things that he could make. Not think he's so comfortable pulling up that
Yeah,
he doesn't have a huge number of those types of plays, because if you hit 57% on, like, that, you put the ball down and you're picking up, that's the points per possession is it speaks for itself, that's good. But I think that there's enough progression there to believe that that's going to be part of what he does. And offensively, I think he's going to be good in the
yes,
NBA. And I'm fairly new to this. I've been, eating off of everybody else's plate for the past few years, just talking to all the best scouts I can. But this guy, watching him, I wouldn't be surprised if he could go north of 20 points per game, like at the NBA
agreed.
level. And that's if his defense becomes acceptable, which some of the bigger guys, depending on how they're utilized, if they're at the bottom of the defense, if some of it is about positioning at the nail, they can make that work. If this, now he was bad defensively, like
Very
off ball fell asleep, died on screens. Every steal I saw him get was very gamble heavy. Like, if he doesn't get this steal, it's a 3-on-2 or a 3-on-1 or something bad is happening. And he's not getting them with gusto. Like, he's just getting there. And so, and certainly he didn't seem to be sticky or dominant at the point of attack. But a guy who can score 20 at the NBA level is not super common. And not at 13, not, where's he's supposed to be like around the back end of the lottery to the
yeah.
early 20s, right?
Yeah, he honestly can go anywhere. I think he's very team dependent. Like when I was referring to MPJ on the Raptors, he's probably less viable just because you're facing a shell the entire time, and the,
Well, can I say I like him next to Scotty? I do. I seeing how some of his like
I think other things would have to happen for that to work. But yes, well,
other things, um I like his shot prep, his
yeah,
screen, like how he manipulates and kind of moves off of screens as a guy about to receive the ball or as a guy who just received the ball. If we are looking at Scotty as a guy who will have some future as a guy who's like, in the high post,
yeah,
as a handoff hub, all this kind of stuff, Sensabaugh does make sense, and I think will make shots out of that. We
yeah.
talk like Caitlin talked about how Scotty, when used in this, had those magnetized eyes for Gary. He's like, I just want somebody to come make shots off of this screen and these handoffs. And it's like Sensible could, as a rookie, I could conceivably see them having like a two-man partnership in that regard.
I can see that too. I think Scotty gets downhill like fairly decently, I would say. So he would be in a position where it kind of works, and also he's just the level of passer. Obviously, he's not Jokic, but Jokic is able to manifest possessions for MPJ simply by creating advantages in the most like nuanced ways, and that creates additional shots. Whereas if he had more of a traditional star, it would probably be much harder for him to get possessions on like non drive and kick type looks. I would say. But overall, I'm a Brice fan. I probably have him higher than most. I would say he's a top 10 player in the draft.
Wow. That is higher than most.
Yeah,
So I'll give everybody like the statistical rundown just because we collected the stats. Might as well read them off. Not everybody's going to go to Hoop Math or Bartovic or whatever. So basically, 0.587 true shooting percentage. That's quite good for college for anybody. 21% of his shots were at the rim. He shot 57.5% there, and 60% of those were unassisted. 57.5 is that's not very impressive, just so everybody knows. 43% of his shots were jumpers inside the arc. He shot 50% on those, 56% from the short mid range, 50% on the long mid range. 36% of his shots were threes. He shot 40.5% on those. 15% were unassisted. 44% on guarded jumpers. That's really high. 48% on unguarded. And he's an 83% free throw shooter. Indicators, 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 shooter, shooter, shooter. It's just there.
yeah,
And, we talked about it at the top, but there's room with his frame. Like, we see guys every once in a while. It's not guaranteed. It's tough to, zoom ahead to the future and say it's going to be there. But we see a lot of scorers who they come out of college and they score the ball better because, let me use the term now, proprioception. They have a really good idea of where guys are in relation to them. They know how to use their bodies to create space, keep guys at bay. And if they have the touch, like Sensabaugh does, then they can have like a really deep bag of shot making, which is extremely valuable and something that Raptors fans, no doubt, are like, please bring it to my city. I don't know if he's going to be the pick, but there's all this kind of stuff. Also, Josh, I was talking to him about Sensabaugh. He said they use him as a pop screener in horns at Ohio State. That's also something like you can do stuff as a
Yeah,
screener when
on
you
the
got
screen.
the bigger frame. It's a
Yeah.
little bit more affecting. And yeah, so I think that's kind of all I've got on Sensabaugh. This was, us poking around, little draft fellas. You want to move on to Coulibaly, or
Oh,
what do you do?
I'm ready. This is my favorite prospect in the draft. I'm ready.
So you made a joke, an obvious joke, at the end of the last. This guy.
No, bro.
Oh my god. Okay, at the end of the last podcast, you made a joke that Coulibaly was the best prospect coming from the Metropolitans in France. Mets 92,
Yeah,
I believe the team name is. When I'm on basketball reference for them, it's Metropolitans, French League A. That's kind of what pops up.
yeah,
Anyway, I decided to look into some Coulibaly tape. You decided to do the same because, as we mentioned at the top, this is not a stats guy. You're not going to find like a heavy dose of, stats to create like this framework of X amount of players here.
yeah,
Like you sort them by usage, points per game, all this kind of stuff, and say, these are the guys who made it. These are the indicators. The indicators are on the tape where this guy is long, fluid, athletic, disruptive, and has a super workable set shot where he shot between 44 and 45% on his threes.
yeah.
In a league that wants length, on a team that maybe still wants length like crazy, Coulibaly, I believe, is an end of the first round prospect as far as where he's considered, right? Is that
Yeah.
correct?
I would say probably moves up, but I would say for right now, anywhere from like the teens to late 20s, I would say.
Okay, so typically not considered a lottery
Yeah.
prospect. Nobody freak out. We're talking about lottery prospects as it comes along. But Coulibaly, we have to talk about the guys we know and the guys we're interested in. Trey liked Coulibaly, so it was then on me to do the
Oh,
research on my end to
jeez.
catch up. I like the film. I do.
Um,
It's also super limited. Like, if you watch the highlights, this guy's gonna blow you away because you
yeah.
get to condense all the best plays. You condense all of Koulibaly's best plays, you say, why doesn't this guy go top five? You watch a game, maybe you're noticing Wembanyama for most of it, but you also see Koulibaly as like a passenger for
Yeah.
many minutes at a time. He's just out there. He runs the break whenever he can. He's active on defense, not always in a positive way, but man, I have a couple numbers that are going to blow some minds if Synergy was collecting the data properly. Um, he's tantalizing.
Yeah.
He's also quiet a lot of the time. I'd like to hear your pitch. You're big on him.
My pitch for the Raptors is we've already traded our pick next year. We have if we're keeping the same team together, this is the probably the last time we'll have a pick this high with Pascal, Fred being this good. You need to swing for the fences and try to get a player with the tools that will extend this core's timeline, especially with the CBA rules changing and the Raptors becoming very expensive. Bilal, incredible athlete, great long strides, and I think the major difference between these long kind of fluid guys you saw like Usman Dang, guys like that came out last year, is when he gets to the rim, he's finishing at the rim. He's a very good finisher, and a lot of these finishes are dunks because he pops athletically. His release is slow, but we have the Noah board. We'll be fine. We'll be fine
Okay.
there.
Yeah.
He already has shown workable skill sets in the on their big club where he can coexist and earn minutes immediately just simply by being a disrupted defender, being able to hit his catch and shoot shots at a decent clip where it's valuable for him to be on the floor to accentuate obviously his length and the length of the team, and also now have some viability because he is going to be able to come off a few actions and have the ability to show some fluidity and use his handle to then generate more offense for the team. Whereas now, if we run an action for somebody like Gary Trent or somebody else, the possession is usually dying, or it's a pass back out to Pascal, who then has to create another tilt for the team. So I think the major pitch is that he has tools and the size and length that he has. He has the size, length, and tools of what you would want to see of a star 3, 4 years down the line. And the ideal scenario is that if you're going to give Pascal this extension, Scotty, OG, and ideally this 13th pick are the ones leading the charge in his age 31, 32 season. I think that you kind of have to have that. If you get a Cam Johnson type pick, if you get Jet Howard, for example, who's going to be a good player, he's going to be able to hit shots, but doesn't necessarily move the needle. I think it's a wasted opportunity.
So I'll start on defense. Coulibaly and Sensabaugh, I think, are complete opposites defensively in that Sensabaugh, when he wanted to become a defensive playmaker,
Yeah,
he has to gamble. Like it has to be a read, a really like he's you made the comparison to Michael Porter Jr. Michael Porter Jr. was a guy who his utility defensively for a long time was like being longer and bigger than guys
yeah,
expected him to be, and like these weak side blocks and like behind like trail blocks and stuff like that. Sensabaugh is similar in that regard. Like his defensive playmaking will be like, I'm gonna go for it. Coulibaly is just passive defensive playmaking. He's one pass away. He doesn't really have to gamble on a dig because he's so long. He just takes like a baby step in. He has pretty good hands for timing that kind of stuff. He's always present in passing lanes. He doesn't really turn his back to the ball very often. There's clearly a lot of potential there. And if synergy isn't lying to me, I mean, guy like the true shooting percentage of shots he defended 40. True shooting 40. That's insane. Even at the rim, guys didn't make shots against him. Jump shots in the mid-range, guys didn't make shots against him. Like I'm watching the film and I see he makes guys feel claustrophobic, and he's like sliding sometimes. Like there's these nice Euro guards that are getting downhill, trying to get to the opposite side of the rim. Like he's taking the bump, allowing the space, still sliding, pinning it off the glass. He's meeting dudes at the rim. It's not a ton, once again, because he's an 18 minutes per game player. It's not like it's not the biggest schedule. It's not a whole bunch of games, but there's so many defensive tools at work that you're like, it's pretty easy to see this guy becoming like an impacting, affecting defender. And that's all great. He's also like similar to Scotty, how Scotty just being like Scotty, the best thing he does defensively currently is on switches. Scotty is pretty good at hanging around on the like he's switching off ball and
yeah,
now he's hanging around the guy who's trying to slip, and he's catching up, but guys underestimate how long the Raptors are
yeah,
switching at the point of attack, catching back up. Because usually it's like, oh, this is a guard switching for the big who's slipping to the rim. Only it's like Pascal or OG or Scotty.
yeah,
That pocket pass, it's not getting past their catch radius.
yeah,
Coulibaly is also a guy who like he's in the mix always. That's the most impressive thing by far to me. He dunks everything. He is a one speed offensive. Like Sensabaugh is like he has a few different speeds offensively. For example, Coulibaly is one speed offensively, which is a huge negative for most players. Like you want to have more than one speed. Obviously, it makes you have counters for your on-ball defender. It makes you able to, manipulate the back end of the defense, and it allows you to create different timing for shot blockers and contests.
Yeah.
Coulibaly, in spite of being a one-speed player, is like this miraculous Euro stepper in the lane, super long finisher at the rim, and the contests at the rim are going to be more effective in the NBA. But he's pretty impressive when he's
Very
like
fluid.
downhill. Now, it's tough to project that because you can't do one speed at the NBA. It's just like Giannis is
Yeah.
the only guy who gets to do one speed. Even Joel Embiid has like four different speeds, right? And he's 7'3", 280 pounds, whatever it is. That's something that Coulibaly has to develop that I don't really see as present in his game whatsoever. Um, but the physical tools are crazy.
Yeah.
Like you watch his highlights, you're thinking top five. You watch like a full game, a lot of the times you're like, where is he? Now it's it's the team's job to determine, how much of this becomes like you're feeling his presence all the time. But
Yeah.
the tools are there.
It's tough. I think like the biggest question is how much do you, because if you break down the stats of actually let me reverse this back. For people that don't know what Met 92 did with Bilal is that a lot of they put him kind of on like the Delano Benton plan where he spent a lot of time with the B team, a lot of time with the A team, and he was playing as much as possible. Um, Obviously, with a lot of these higher picks, not Lucas probably was usually the exception. Most of these young Euro players have to assimilate within the team. They're usually not getting shots. Guys like Wemby and Luca are usually the exception. You see guys who went high like Mario Hazonia, Christos Porzingis, guys like that. They weren't scoring a lot, but you saw those tools, and in Porzingis' sense, it it translated. With Bilal, I'm betting on the athletic tools translating enough for him to get enough looks, and he's already shown that he's able to fit in with a professional team in a sense where he can hit a catch and shoot shot to the point where he needs to be guarded.
45%, man. Like, and on decent volume given how
Yeah,
much time he spent out there. He can hit shots. Set
exactly.
shots, he can hit them.
And he's going to be able to get to the rim and finish a lot of the looks that he gets if you close out on him. And that's super valuable. So he's going to be able to ideally earn minutes fairly soon and scale up to a point where a team is then looking for, hey, we need to give this guy reps. He's showing me something. Whereas someone like maybe Jonathan Kaminga early on was like too much of a train wreck to win minutes and also present him reps.
I will say, now it's obviously it's fine if you expect him to get better at this,
Yeah,
as far as like putting the ball down after a closeout and getting there. I don't. I gotta see that first,
fair enough.
because that like at the, I really have to see that first because that one speed thing, like there might be some charges called on this young man. I like and while the same thing I looked for with Sensabaugh is, what type of passes is he making while on the move with advantage. Coulibaly, like there's a bunch of interesting reads that he was able to make, but the playmaking isn't like he's not blowing anybody
I agree
away
with
with
that.
that. And if you're talking about like ball placement and the types of passes he can just use from like a where can you throw the ball point of view, not even vision, like maybe that's like a little lacking. But the vision as well is like it's not popping all the time. These are all things that can get better though.
Yeah,
And if someone told me they expected him to hit on like a bunch of different things, I would not argue it. Even right now, I think I'm just trying to present it as like these are the tools and they're crazy. It's just you don't see them,
yeah,
working that often. Um, it's really meaningful that he shoots the ball that well from downtown. I'll say that much. That is a really big deal because a lot of the guys like this, they don't shoot the ball that well from downtown. Like you have to, a lot of those guys, this is kind of new basketball, right? Like this same prospect in 2013 is a guy who you're like, he shot 32% from three. We have to get him to shoot jumpers at all. And now it's like this guy shoots 45% from three. We have to get him to a point where like he's fluid on the pull up so that when he gets run off the line, he has a counter.
yeah,
Or he can do like a little drop dribble into space and hit that too. All those things are like a lot more tenable as a developmental step than building out a whole jumper. God, do the Raptors ever know that, by the way. Um, it's a big deal that he hits threes the way he does. It's not a huge sample size, by the way.
Yeah, that's
And I'm not the draft guy who's like, and he hit this at this weekend Marauders. He hit this at EYBL. He did that. Like, I don't have those numbers, but it's a big deal that he shot this well.
yeah. I to For me, I think the biggest thing overall is, even if, say, a pull up jumper doesn't develop or he can't put the ball on the floor, you've seen guys like OG being able to. Hey, hey, let me get let me finish.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, very early on in his career, they were still able to find actions where he got moving, and his athletic pop and his ability to finish at the rim was still valuable in a half court sense. He has not necessarily the same strength, but that same ability to finish at the rim, and the Raptors need a lot more of that. You saw early in the season, OG was able to kind of be their probably their best advantage creator for a small amount of time, just simply because he was able to get to the rim and finish at a very high clip, to the point where defenses had to make a decision on how to guard him. Did it work out after? No, but I think Bilal, if given the same opportunities, will be able to score at the rim at a high clip, while also being a passable defender probably in year 2 or year 3. So you're getting someone that's probably going to be able to play minutes for you, even with the upside of having these plus plus tools, which is very rare for those guys.
Something that we also didn't mention that is definitely worth mentioning, especially when you make the OG comp, is like, he's got a pretty good knack. Like, he's got a pretty good nose for cutting.
Yeah,
Coulibaly. The You have to, when you're limited off the dribble, you have to make your movement dangerous. Some guys don't, especially guys who, if you're hitting that many spot up threes, you might be content to just, like, maybe the ball hits my hands and I get to take an unguarded jumper or something like that.
yeah.
But Coulibaly, he knows his length, he knows his mobility is a weapon, and there's lots of nice cuts that he made. Again, within the context of, there's B team, there's A team, there's stuff like that. I didn't see any B team, by the way. I only watched 18.
B team,
Um,
he cooked. It was very Delano esque.
Noted.
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe I end up writing about him. This
yeah,
is like a preliminary something, but that's how do you feel about that? Is cool, Bolly? I'll read out the numbers, by the way, just
yeah.
so everybody has them. So the one that really stuck out to me is like shots defended, 40, the true shooting percentage of 40. That's insane. If I'm misreading that, like, it seems like I would have to be, but if I'm not, then yeah, length is important defensively. And everybody's gonna tell me about Fred. I get it. Ha ha ha. But yeah, true shooting percentage of 60.5%, 44% from three. He shot 67% at the rim. No presence in the mid range. He only took 10 mid range shots. He made one. So he only took 12 guarded jumpers all season. He shot 33%. Um, you don't want to dive into his numbers as much as we had like for Sensabaugh, because there's just not the same range of shot making. And like, I don't know how many times do you guys want me to say like he shoots 10% on his mid-range shot? Like, oh well, so those are the numbers. Do you have any other cool volley points before we kind of hit the road?
Um, to me, I think he's a lottery pick, just simply because I think in the draft right now, there's probably like 5 to 6 guys where you could say like this is going to be a bona fide starter in the league. And when you're at a position sort of like where the Raptors are at, you need to bet on tools. Guys who have shown plus athleticism with the polish and footwork that he has and has shown in his highest peaks, is really rare. I think he's better than Jonathan Kaminga, who went fairly high. I didn't say that to Tim, but I think he's better than Jonathan Kaminga. I think he's better than I think he's better than Usman Deng. I think he's
I like Kuminga, man.
Steve Kerr disagrees. So, but
You heard him. He said the championship window is gone the moment Kuminga is leaving.
of course, but yes,
um,
I just think he's way more polished than this athletic freak that typically goes late lotto where someone is betting on. He's shown ability to scale with a decent sized team. He got more minutes on, I believe, Bet finished second in the league, if I'm not mistaken. Fairly high, doesn't really matter. But his minutes scaled up as the games got more important, which bodes well for how good he can be in the league.
French speakers. You got Pascal. You got Christian. 3 French speakers on one team is like a lot. Maybe there's some camaraderie there. I don't think anybody else speaks French on the Raptors, if I had to guess.
Oh yeah, Kev's not on the team anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Chris Boucher. Duh.
Oh yeah, we would have got
Yeah.
killed.
he would have been the one doing it. He's like, Samson, you forgot I speak French? You forgot about me? Yeah. Anyway, that feels like a decent
Yeah.
place to end it. How do you feel about that?
No, it was good. I'm hoping to dig into more prospects. Hoping to disagree with Samson more on on some of these because
um,
I haven't really liked these guys.
so you'll pick the prospects. We'll dive into it.
Right.
You don't have to pick them now, but just stay tuned, listener. We'll be back in a week, and this time around, we'll be talking a little bit more about not. We'll be talking about prospects once again, but we'll be talking about kind of the permutations of how the Raptors might use the pick. We'll probably dedicate like 10 minutes to like maybe they get an extra pick. Maybe the way that the lottery shook out means that there's a trade on the table. All that kind of stuff. And I know people are going to say trade Pascal or trade OG. Could be either one of them, to be honest. Don't know what's going on over there, really. Any parting shots from you, Trey, before we get out of here?
After the lottery and realizing we're stuck at 13, um, I'm still confident with the draft history that we have, but we're gonna get someone fairly good. So I'm smiling today.
Lottery, like a lottery pick,
Yeah.
is important.
Yeah.
I know that the Raptors won without a lottery pick. Like, like Kawhi was
Yeah.
15, Kyle's back end, right? Like all this kind of stuff. But not that, and Gasol, for example, all this stuff. I get it. But a lot of the talent on the Raptors team when they won without a lottery pick is that they traded lottery picks for guys who established themselves as stars in the NBA after not being lottery picks, which isn't the same because like you could pick from the league at large
Yeah.
a team of non-lottery picks. It's very rare that one singular team houses all the talent. Like even the Heat, right? Like they have all
Yeah.
the undrafted players, but they they signed a guy who had a lot of talent traded for him in the past in Jimmy, who's
Yeah.
the hub, and yeah, all this kind of stuff. High picks are important.
Yeah.
It's important to stress that, and it's important that the Raptors make good on this one. Trey, thanks for hopping on with me. As always, listener, hope you enjoyed. We put on a little scouting hat. We're doing a little bit of scouting, hanging out, and hopefully, there's like an armchair psychologist. There's armchair scouts, although a lot of scouting is done from a seat. If I'm, geez, I'm ranting at this point. This is way off the beaten path. I'm sure people have things they want to say to us that they want to tell us that we're wrong about or right about, or they have guys they want us to talk about. Let us know in the comments. If there's a bunch of people like, I want to hear about this guy, chances are we'll talk about him. That's about it. Thanks to everybody for tuning in, whether you got into this in the morning or at night. Have a blessed day, and goodbye.